glad you're here. We are really excited to talk to you about streaming tabletop RPGs. I'm Anna Prosser-Robinson. I work for Twitch and also co-founded Misclicks, and I'm part of Dice Camera Action. Thanks. Wow. Look at that service.
Listen, you pay the good money for those hirelings. A couple of GP a day, carry your torches. Dungeons and Dragons joke.
It's very early for most of us. We're mostly on California-ish type time, so excuse the giddiness. We appreciate you being here.
I'm from Canada. It's still 1986 there. So. Hi, everybody.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
So I'm going to be moderating this panel of fine people, and we'll have introductions with them really soon, but just wanted to give you an overview of what we have planned. We're going to have a little bit of discussion, but we're going to try to keep that fairly minimal because we'd love to answer your questions as much as possible. So we will get to a Q&A about halfway through the panel, so start thinking about if you have any great questions. I have a pretty strict no, this is not a question, it's a statement rule. So if you do that, be advised I will cut you off and ask you to go to the end of the line until you think of something with a question mark.
I thought you said you were going to cut them, and I was like, whoa, Anna. I'll get up and I will attack you with a weapon.
Look,
so.
My day-to-day work life is very difficult.
Damn.
All right, so I'd love to start by introducing these fine people. If you could go down the row and say who you are, what you do, and your connection to streaming tabletop role-playing games.
I am Nadja Otikor, a.k.a. Trista. I work for Twitch on the Twitch Studios team with Anna Prosser-Robinson, who is a wonderful boss and does not cut people.
Not usually.
Not usually. And regarding streaming tabletop, I've done some DMing on Misclicks, and I've guested on one-shots for Roll20 app and RollPlay.
Word. I'm Adam Koebel. I'm the GM in residence for Roll20 and GM for RollPlay. I've been doing the tabletop RPGs on Twitch thing for about 3 years now, and I've run a bunch of different shows. You probably recognize me from those. I also co-developed a tabletop role-playing game called Dungeon World. Yeah, that's right.
You really got to say the whole name.
Yeah, right. Award-winning tabletop role-playing game. That's the full official title. If you look it up, that's what it is. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Elyssa Grant, and I am a project manager at Penny Arcade. I am also the producer of Acquisitions Incorporated and the C Team. And I got my start working at Wizards of the Coast on D&D as a producer.
Project manager is the fancy business way of saying dungeon master, I think.
It's very similar, actually.
Yeah, they're the same job.
Responsible for everything.
Yeah.
Less chaos, more chaos. My name is Taliesin Jaffe. I'm a content producer at Geek and Sundry and a player on the Critical Role RPG.
Hey everyone, I am Holly Conrad, CommanderHolly online, and I just woke up 5 minutes ago. I'm also still covered in fake dirt, but anyway.
Holly, fake dirt.
Yeah. I play Strix on Dice Camera Action, and I stream that, and that's it, I think. Yeah, good morning.
So I think the number one question that most of us always get asked when we're talking about streaming role-playing games is, how is streaming a game different than playing at home with your friends in terms of how do you have to change your play, what's fun about a stream that's not necessarily fun about a normal game, and vice versa? What kind of comes to mind immediately with those differences for you guys?
The thing I usually say on panels like this is that when you're streaming a game, they're not sessions, they're episodes. And you really have to think about pacing a bit different. You have to think about, you're playing for an audience. And usually as a GM, your audience is your players, but when you're streaming, your players become part of this audience-facing thing. And you're all kind of on a more equal playing field in that way, or at least for me. Also, the best thing about streaming is having chat. Somebody came up to me yesterday and complimented me on my chat shit posting. Wherever you are, God bless. That's the best compliment I've gotten in a long time. So I have a lot of fun with the chat.
I think there's this myth that playing, and every time I hear someone say this, it's usually the Dungeon Master. Every time I hear someone say this, I cringe, but there's this myth that like, oh, playing on stream is just the same. We're just like playing at home, just a bunch of friends playing bullshit. Like, it's totally different. It's completely different. And it's because you're aware that there's an additional player that doesn't get to do anything except kind of try to contribute in this gestalt voice. They don't have an individual voice like a player does. And if you're not aware of them, either in the moment or between episodes, you can completely lose touch with what's going on in your game. Like, for me, it's as important to think about the audience as it is to think about the players or the game that we're playing, or any other factor.
A lot of us come from different backgrounds. Some come from the gaming sphere and moved into streaming. Some came from entertainment and moved into gaming, and some sort of mix in between. I'm interested to hear how it mixes with being a gamer and an entertainer, and especially from the position of a producer too, thinking about how you inspire the people that are playing a game to also remember to be entertainers, or do you have to rein them in? You know, what has your experience been like, Elyssa?
Yeah, so a lot of it has to do, I think, with making sure that the players feel comfortable with creating a story together. And so those table dynamics are extremely important, first and foremost. But I think it's more about, trying to promote the creation of that story as opposed to worrying about the mechanics and making sure they're getting caught up on things like that. The mechanics are there as a way for them to be guided, right? But otherwise, like, I always tell them, like, get up there, have fun, get into your character, and just play off of each other. And obviously that's different between the stream and the live games. So, yeah, it's about making sure they have what they need and making sure the comfort levels are there.
Yeah, getting into the story, I think, is, for me, what makes it the most entertaining as a player and as a watcher. And it's interesting that you mentioned kind of the chat as a player and all of that, because Taliesin Critical Role is pretty famous for having a giant community of people who take it, so seriously, but also have such love for it. What's it like having this giant group of people who are also kind of playing along with you, and how does that affect the story?
It's interesting because we have I feel like we have a slightly different experience just because we don't have any instant reaction or any visual cues from chat. Like, the way that we set up our game just didn't push in that direction. And I have played with friends a couple times on games where the chat is available, and it changes the dynamic, not in a bad way, but in just on a whole, you feel a little bit more. Has everybody here done theater before? I don't know how many of us are.
Really? Oh, interesting.
It's that thing where sometimes there's that audience who really wants to call into that show where you're really like poking the audience, and then there's sometimes those shows where the audience is really like, you are aware they're there, but it's just darkness.
On the theater thing, I feel like doing streamed RPGs is a bit like doing kabuki, because people are shouting at you while you're playing, right? And like, it can be very invigorating hearing, because everyone in the audience kind of like knows, and that's the quality of playing a role-playing game that people are familiar with, because people know when that big moment's coming and they understand the mechanisms of the game. And I love that kind of feedback, but it definitely changes things.
And it changed, and the audience and the way that people role play is such a unique form now that we're creating that I'm really digging, is that it's so personal and true. Like, I'd been acting for decades before this, which is, and normally I meet people and talk about characters that I played. Now people just like know bizarrely intimate levels of my life, and it's, and it's cool, but it's like definitely like I don't like even have to say anything, because it's not like I have anything to share they don't already know. And like, have you had that experience too, where just people they're just like acutely aware of who you are on certain levels, even by performing so much that it's.
Well, I think, too, the reason I was asking about the Critical Role community is I've seen, the fan art and the writing and everything that comes out of that. So the deep level at which they share that story you're creating, I think, is so interesting.
I've never experienced anything like it. I mean, it's the whole notion of performative role-playing is such a fascinating, I get hoity-toity on occasion. I talk about, traditional mime is like kind of the like pirouette and Columbine like levels of like just taking on these characters and performing for people. It's a little improv-y on occasion, but it's fascinating in figuring out we're all still figuring out the formula of what it is that works and why people come to see this.
It's interesting to talk about how, people feel like they begin to know you on an intimate level. And, Holly, you and I have talked a lot about how our characters on Dice Camera Action are not us, but there are so many elements of us that we kind of like lay ourselves bare a lot of times in these games. And that's different than acting a part in a lot of ways. So what has that experience been like for you? I know you participate in chat during your...
Yeah, I mean, I did theater at high school. I was townsperson number 6 in The Music Man, so I don't know if that counts for anything, but. Yeah, no, please don't remind me. It was the worst experience of my life. I'll never see that musical again. But yeah, so that was my end of my acting career, everyone. But yeah, like but I've been role-playing and playing RPGs since I was very, very young. So I kind of like, I came into this like, I love my characters, I love these games, I've read the books alone. And so like, I feel like it was streaming for me and being, getting to play my character is almost like, it's just an aspect of myself, because I make all my characters an aspect of myself. Like Strix embodies anxiety, whereas like I have a character, Alba, who embodies like my love of nature, and it's just like, so I kind of use it as a way to still be myself, but still be playing a different character who will have different actions that will make the game interesting. And yeah, I'm always in chat just like saying things like wee woo and like all dumb stuff. So I love just like when something bad happens, I try to wait like at least 5 seconds, but like sometimes I don't, and they're like, oh no, she's saying something in the chat. It's all caps. So I literally get we get as excited as everyone else. Like it's like magical. Like we've written fan fiction about our own characters, like posted it on our subreddit because we just get excited.
I actually have a question. How distracted do you ever feel by chat, out of curiosity?
I don't at all. Like I love having them there because it's like you said, it's like another player, but it's also like if I make a good goof and they're like, ha ha, and I'm like, thanks.
Yeah, that instant
like, that was funny,
gratification.
and I'm like, yeah. Yeah, so they're kind of like for our show, we call them the Waffle Fam. And they're kind of like our little like our little chat family, and it's awesome.
Playing a game with chat open is a bit like being a comedian when your audience is on the moon. So you make a joke, and you wait for the joke to get to the chat and bounce back to you.
Yeah, and then you're like, I did it.
Yeah, 7 seconds ago I was really funny.
I have that on like the Alpha Centauri version of that, which I make a joke, and
Right,
then like
2
9
weeks
months
later.
later, 9 months later, I'm at a con, like, remember when you said that? I'm like, yeah, like that was pretty funny, man. I didn't even know anyone heard that. Oh,
Shouting into the void.
Elyssa, you're usually, facilitating that audience interaction and making sure that the audience and the player connection is strong. What's it like to kind of facilitate that? Have you seen any cool instances of like this? I'm just always wowed by the kind of like collaborative storytelling that happens. What has that been like from a producer standpoint?
Yeah, so our community, I think, is the biggest aspect of our show in a way where we call them the Shadow Council because we also can't see them or our players can't see them. But what we do is we've implemented the Table Talk segment, and so we get questions from the audience, and then we start answering them after the show's over. And that's kind of like our immediate way to interact with them. But when we go to shows, the community is absolutely amazing. The players do a really good job at interfacing with them over social media, and it's just like this amazing relationship that we have. It's pretty phenomenal. I'm constantly blown away by the community.
Yeah, there's a lot of streams will ask, hey, no backseat gaming, don't tell me what to do, don't tell me what to play. But I think in tabletop role-playing games on streams, there's a lot of room for that kind of like...
It's interesting because...
I knew you'd jump in on that.
Well, it's interesting because it's like being backseated by 10-year-olds because all chat ever wants is for people to kiss each other or kill each other. That's it. That's all they want. They're just like, smooch. No, kill him. Both. Do both things. Like, I can't decide. I just want so much. It's interesting because we are telling a story, and there can be nuance to these stories, even if you're just kind of doing a goofy D&D thing, and you have to be able to read the room's subtext rather than their super text, which tends to just be the shouty stuff. But no matter what's going on, I feel like even that kind of backseat attitude is a way of showing that people are invested because they care about the game you're playing, they care about the choices that you're making, and they know that there is a possibility that it could affect what happens next.
Right.
And someone's developing a game where that's the right audience. Like it's an audience always trying, like looking for the right game for themselves. Like Critical Role is not for everybody. Boy, it's just true. It's definitely got a niche, but like, there are games where it just makes more sense for if you really do want to be somebody who's like trying to like backseat quarterback a little bit, to have people who are going to enjoy, respect, and really appreciate your participation in having an opinion. And people are, I feel like that's the nice thing, is that we're all starting to develop these very individual flavors, which I really like. You can find anything as for your audience.
And what's really cool too, I think, is that they can find a play style for themselves. So like, and that's really important, because I feel like we're all playing this because we love it, but also so that people out there can play. So it's like, oh, if you watch all these different shows, you might find one that's like, oh yeah, so they're playing that way? That's rad. Like, that's how I want to do it.
I feel like almost if the audience is a player, part of casting your show is creating, or at least doing some work to mold what your audience and your community is going to be like, and having like just working that into sort of your personnel concerns at your table as well, because it's very clear when somebody comes into chat who does not fit the community.
I think their name's like a super dabber, like 69, and it's like, nope.
Yeah.
Shout
What
outs,
the fuck is this?
shout outs
there's a
to
game for that
XX
person
Sephiroth,
somewhere.
Harsh Tokes 420.
Yeah.
That's something I'd love
Shut
to
it down.
dive into, because I think for people who are watching this panel are likely a lot of people who might like to try streaming tabletop role-playing games, or, so when you hear mold your audience and create a good room for people to come watch in, how do you go about doing that? What are some of the tips and tricks you guys have for when you get started, making sure that your chat experience is good?
We've trained the role play chat. We've taught them so well how to behave so that they will reinforce, and not like necessarily good behavior, but we've taught them what we expect from them. So over time, it used to be, the more familiar the game, the more likely chat is to have an opinion about your use of the rules. So if you're playing a game like Dungeons and Dragons, as a GM or as a player, you might misinterpret a rule. And chat has an opinion about that. And so we've taught our audience that if you want to be a part of the rules discussion, you got to come to the table with a page number. And if you say like, you used the rule wrong, this is what it is, and you didn't cite that page number, I don't have to say anything, because the rest of chat will be like, yo, where's that page number? We've trained them very well, because they know that's the rule and that's how it goes. And I think it's just reminding them of that practice and being like, yes, it's cool to get excited and we want your feedback, but here is a constructive way to do that.
Do you guys have anything to add?
I cheat. We have a company that,
Yeah.
that meticulously and with great energy combs through and makes it almost impossible to participate with the game without being extremely polite and nice to everybody involved. There's a series of systems. It's like our experience on Critical Role is I don't think it would be applicable to anybody starting up, just because we have weird resources.
But it's a cool thing, I think, to use as an example. A lot of people, when they start streaming, feel like,
Highly
I
curated.
have to let anyone say whatever they want in my chat. But having a company like Geek and Sundry that says, no, this is exactly what we allow, and we expect politeness. I mean, that's almost kind of radical.
No,
these days.
it's weirdly a throwback. I mean, I think of like the if anyone's a Sherlock Holmes fan, of Mycroft's club that he goes to where no one's allowed to talk. He has Mycroft has a gentleman's club where the rule is once you're inside the main clubhouse, no one is ever allowed to speak, ever. It's everyone just sits in silence and eats and reads and just avoids eye contact. And like, it's your salon, and you get to decide what the rules of engagement are, but and you might want a ballroom, like a barroom brawl, but you also might want some ground rules of who's gonna be in there and how they're gonna treat each other. And a good mod, a good mod is worth so much.
That is very true. I would love to dive into as well, because a question I get a lot of times is, that's really cool that you like playing that game, but why would people watch that? And I think we represent a cross-section of people who've been doing this a long time, and we have seen people tune in to watch it. So in the interest of kind of providing a guide for someone who might be looking for, how do I make a show that an audience wants to watch? Why do you think people tune in to watch tabletop role-playing games?
Education, especially I didn't start playing tabletop games, so I saw it. And this whole, it used to be that GMing had like this unspoken apprenticeship thing. Like if you wanted to learn how to GM, you found a GM.
Yeah, if you can't trace your lineage back to the Gygax, you don't
Right.
count.
And now it's
I'm a
just
sixth
like,
generation.
Right, yes, thank you.
I watched this guy do it, and I was like, yeah, I could do that, and then I did it.
You have to Diablerize another dungeon master.
But yeah, learning about games, learning the ways and that people approach it, because not everybody can read a rule book and then like understand how that works with people at the table. Like being able to see it and have something to frame your own games is nice. To get inspiration is great, and also just to it's a community of people, and you get to like kind of hang out semi-silently, but you get to hang out with them and watch them just crack jokes at each other or like get in these really deep emotional moments with each other. It's like any other sort of live performance in that way.
Anything additional? We have education and enjoyment, entertainment.
I feel so disconnected from the idea of like watching the kind of content I make because I'm so busy making it. Like people are like, yo, you see that latest episode of Critical Role? And I'm like, where the fuck am I gonna get 5 hours
Man,
to watch
I feel
a
you.
TV show
Yeah.
about other people playing D&D? I have a Dungeons and Dragons game to run.
Yeah.
Like I don't, I feel like it's the unpredictability. It's the fact that if you watch a TV show, you know that the episode you are watching was written and produced a long-ass time ago. But if you're watching a game of D&D, God only knows what's going to happen. And that's true right now, and it's going to be true the next episode, and it can get away from you. And I think being able to tune in and watch that happen, that alchemy of chaos, is really important as a reason for people to watch.
Yeah, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think that that unfolding of the story is just extremely important for the community aspect. But I also think that a lot of people will tune in and watch these shows because they also don't necessarily have the time or resources to put on games themselves, or they also want ideas for their own games, right? So I find that very interesting that people will say, you know, well, I put these shows on as I'm doing some work for entertainment, but also because they want to still experience tabletop gaming when they don't necessarily have the time.
I'll also, I mean, like, God, there's a wonderful age range on this. I'll say as somebody who sort of grew up in a bit of the 80s and most of the 90s, there's a certain amount
Taliesin
of...
means the 1880s, just so we're clear on this one.
I had a steam-powered car. There is a certain sense of I feel isolation and disassociation that came with the internet that I think that we've not had a really adult conversation yet as a culture about what this machine is doing to us. And I think its effects are profound, far more profound than anyone's. I mean, like, we never really had a full conversation about television, and now we do this. And I think it's altering our brain chemistry on a really heavy level. We are mammals who are not built for this level of communication.
You merely adopted the internet, Taliesin. I was born into it.
Like, a lot of my young friends are like, use a lot less internet than I do. And I think that we have kind of on a weird level tapped into a reasonable simulator for vulnerability and emotional interconnection that it's I think is making people, like, occasionally I have a lot of audience members who just, it makes them feel better just to watch people act like humans in a room, which is becoming rarer than it should be. And I think that we do a good job. A lot of it, just watching people play games is so primal on that level, I feel.
And if I could piggyback off of that, I think that's also contributing to the resurgence of playing.
Yes.
Because a lot of people have social anxiety, myself included. It's like, hey, I can hang out with you, and it's not me hanging out with you per se. Like that weird awkward person, I could just put her away for a while, and I can be confident, you know, bard or wizard or, you know, gunlugger or whatever I want to be, and just interact with people without necessarily having that layer of abstraction.
Oh yeah, it's helped me lower my dosages on like several levels. Like literally, yeah, it's been even performing for an audience, which should be this intensely stressful, and is an intensely stressful reality, is still so calming and playing games just makes you feel better, and everything gets a little easier.
I think the experience I've had in the past couple years with playing role-playing games on stream with people has had such a profound effect on me in a similar way of making my life better, making my emotional health better. And I think, to your point, some people tune in to kind of tap into that and kind of experience that as well. Has playing role-playing games, like Taliesin said, had personal effects on you guys, or even facilitating role-playing games and being part of that community? If you feel
I
ready to
dungeon
share.
master 16 hours of content a week. I'm fucking exhausted all the time. Like I am, it's exhausting. It's the right kind. It's a good kind of exhausting though. Like that. I think doing anything creative is good for your brain, and playing role-playing games, because of that impromptu nature of the way that play emerges, I think it keeps your brain working in a way that just kind of going through day-to-day life wouldn't otherwise. You get to exercise a part of your head that is, I think, atrophied for a lot of people.
Yeah, I DM'd 2 games and nearly lost my mind. I don't know how you deal. I mean, it feels great, but oh my God, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a
Oh.
deep pit of madness from which you can never escape, but it's fine. It's
Yeah.
nice down here. I got a couch and stuff.
I'm
It's
still having stress dreams about Vampire the Masquerade. It's been like 3 weeks. I'm like,
you in the entire 1990s.
So I do want to talk too about, we can talk all day about how it feels great and how being part of these communities feel great, but I think one of the things that we've been really talking about in the most recent years is, why would a business ever want to do something like this? Why is streaming profitable? Why should someone put time into it? And it was really timely, actually, that the article from The Verge just came out recently where Dungeons & Dragons said that their study showed that over the last year, over half of their new players came from watching people play live on streams, or watching people play live on stages. So do you guys have anything to say to someone who might be considering starting a stream, or a company that might not understand why to stream their game? Anything about why this could be valuable to a business, or to a sole proprietor who wants to stream and make streaming their job?
Yeah, I think the way that you connect with your community and your fan base is enough of a reason just off the bat. You know, there's something extremely special, and if you are attentive as a company to that fan base, I think that it's one of the most amazing experiences you might have as a company. But that being said, you do have to put in that time and effort. You have to, make sure that your audience is being heard, and that you are fostering this environment that's healthy, right? So it is work, but it's worthwhile work,
Totally.
I think that this, especially now, like within the last year or so, the sort of market for tabletop role-playing game shows streamed on Twitch has been very highly skewed in favor of Dungeons & Dragons. And like, Wizards of the Coast, God love them, they're not the only game in town. And if you are trying to start your own stream, consider playing a game that is not D&D as a method of standing out, right? As being like, this is a game that we're gonna play that maybe you're not familiar with. It's a role-playing game, it's like D&D, but it does like some other stuff. And on the flip side, from a publisher standpoint, like just pay attention to that shit. There are so many publishers of tabletop role-playing games whose games just are not getting played, and if you stream and you reach out to them and you, as a fan, you wanna engage with that stuff, they should respond, right? There's some really good room there. What I'm really saying is, if you're playing Dungeon World on the internet, yo, get at me. I will retweet your shit. But I think it's really weird because, like, for a lot of us, we've been doing this for years already, and even Wizards is kind of showing up to the party that we've been having for years already, being like, all right, guys, let's do this Twitch thing. And we're like, yeah, we got it. Thanks, though. Like, welcome.
I feel that.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things that, more and more small press games are going to have to pick up on that, because obscurity is a thing that kills a game, right? And if you've got people playing your game, you should be reaching out to them and engaging with that community.
Yeah, to kind of jump off of that, I also think it's important to look at the tools that the different TRPG, the role-playing games have. So, like, for example, Edge of the Empire has an app, and you can utilize these apps in very innovative and interesting ways, and I think that that's even more of a draw to, look at what these publishers have to offer, not just as, books and tools, but, what kind of technology they have to provide.
And as a publisher, I think you can get a lot out of this for sponsoring a game, your game's being played, because it's a very unique laboratory for seeing how your game is played, what people are getting caught on, what's working, what isn't. We had a fabulous conversation with the creator of Dread after we had run our Dread game on Alpha, and it was, he walked away from watching our show feeling like he had learned a lot about his own game and the way that people were manipulating it, and it's a great laboratory to see what really is working and how you can improve your system.
Holly, I think you have an interesting perspective here too, as someone whose job is to be an individual content creator. So I would be interested to hear your perspective for those kind of people. Is streaming tabletop role-playing games a legitimate or feasible way to kind of be part of your content creation strategy?
I mean, yeah, it's like I come from the YouTube world, which I guess is like completely different than coming from streaming in a lot of ways. But like, it's kind of like, I think that you can always do. Oh, fuzz just fell out of my hair. That's crazy.
Could be glitter.
No, it was part of Strix, so it was probably
see
garbage.
see above re fake dirt.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, but yeah, so it's like I also come from playing a lot of regular games. But I think that it's awesome to stream, but I think it's also awesome to do like supplemental content. Like I'm working on a show right now called The Friendly Table, where I would teach people how to play games, and it's gonna be real fun and easy, and my birds will be in it and stuff. But it's like things like, and this was crazy. Like I tweeted like I'm just gonna do this, and it got like 12,000 likes, and I was like, whoa, hold on, you guys. Like now I have pressure to do this, but that just shows that there is a huge want for more watchable content like on YouTube. But you can always do a stream that ties into that. And I think that's the best thing to do, honestly, because you need to have your content in different platforms, because you never know when YouTube's gonna be like, I don't think Dungeons and Dragons is cool anymore, demonetize. So it's like, you never know what's gonna happen. So always have like multiple things, like do some artwork. Like, I mean, I do all kinds of nonsense, but whatever you enjoy doing, like if you enjoy making videos, or if you enjoy, even if you paint minis, like paint some minis on stream. That's rad.
If you have a thought like, oh, nobody will want to watch this, you are wrong.
Yeah.
You are way
You're
ass
wrong.
wrong. I got my start on Twitch streaming myself for 2 hours at a time, managing spreadsheets for a between session game of Stars Without Number. Literally, I was just doing math and like moving shit around, and I was like, all right, how much do these spaceships cost? Let's buy some cyber ninjas. And like people were just all about that shit. Like that's how I got
That
started.
sounds really soothing, actually.
Yeah, right? And like literally, I was playing a game with myself and getting excited about the results. Like it's the dorkiest thing, and it's still on my YouTube. Go check it out. But like I think the thing is, and this goes to Nadja's point, anything that we can do, especially Dungeon Masters, anything that we can do to demystify the secret tower in which we live, is useful and cool. People want to see, like, what do you do between sessions? How do you create all of this stuff? Where do these ideas come from? And if you just sit down in front of your camera with your spreadsheet and be like, all right, cyber ninjas, here we go. People will watch. People get excited about that stuff because it's cool and it's background stuff.
It's because you're excited, that's why.
Yeah.
Because it's
Yeah.
like, if you're excited about it, I mean, then everyone watching is gonna be excited about it. It's like, sometimes I'm just like, was I too excited about that? Like, and then everyone's like, no, and I'm like, okay, then maybe a little.
Also, as the representative of brand here, we are not known as Cyber Ninjas, we are the Math Squad.
That's true. Fair.
Sorry, Math Squad people, I got you.
Well, last question before we transition to Q&A. I just wanted to get a sense. We've thrown a few of these ideas out now for people who might want to start streaming role-playing games, but from a perspective of someone who might be a sole content creator, someone who might be working, for a larger corporation or a larger business who wants to get them to start streaming, someone who's part of a community that wants to do more, what would you guys say is the best place to start for someone if they're like, I'd really like to do this, but it just feels so big and so, hard?
I mean,
What's the first step?
turn on your webcam. Well, get OBS or XSplit. Then turn on your webcam and like just learn streaming first if you're going to present your game on Twitch or whatever platform. Figure the platform out. Like play Minesweeper for an hour. But you don't want to be bogged down with running your game and figuring out your technology at the same time. So take some time, figure that out, and then you can grow base and work your way up to presenting a full-on game. Or hire somebody or find somebody to do production for you.
And there's actually, I get that question a lot of like, how do I stream? There's actually a really huge amount of tutorials out there that people can find. So it's not, if you Google how to stream, you usually can find good stuff.
Yeah, I'd say don't let technology keep you from streaming, right? So like, get the base minimum of what you need in order to stream and just go for it. Because I know that technology can get really expensive very quickly. So yeah, you might as well just jump straight in. And also, I think it's really important to maintain consistency. So like, you know, if you're going to start playing a game, make sure that you're going to be playing it weekly, you know, or you know, every other week, but make sure that that's consistent across the board, because people will want to come back at that time. And you're also going to be developing a certain amount of followers who will come back during that time, because that's when they're available as well.
Yeah, consistency is really important. That's a big key. Also, I would say watch other Twitch streamers. Watch streamers. Watch a variety of them. Figure out what you like. Figure out what you don't. Figure out what engages you, and definitely make sure you watch people who are dealing with not just a lot of money and a lot of backing, but people who are streaming with very, very low resources, and find people who are doing low resource streaming that interests you and appeals to you, so you can start to get a sense of what you want to do.
Yeah, I think more than just like doing it yourself, being a part of other small communities of people who are doing it. Like find other RPG shows that aren't the big ones. Find other communities that are still growing and participate in those communities. Not because you hope to get something out of it, but because that's like a responsible way to build community and you want to be a part of this space. So go and hang out, be a good member of that community, find ones you like, moderate those communities, participate in that stuff, and that'll open you up to collaboration down the line, right? When you're ready to be like, cool, I want to try and do this, there may be room for you and the communities you're a part of to interact, right? Because a big part of what makes people successful in this space is collaboration and spotlight sharing, right? I love having people on my shows that people have not seen before, that I know are like good role players or fun people to play with. I like exposing my audience to those people. And so finding that space to participate in can be really helpful in the short and the long term, because you're going to learn so much and you're going to get to be a part of the space, even if you haven't started streaming yet.
Holly, anything to add? Those are all good places to start. But
Yeah, no, I mean, they're all great. I always say, like, too, I mean, don't just do it because you're like, this looks like something that could benefit me. Like, do it because you love it. Like, if you love it, and it's getting to the point where it's getting really popular. There's a lot of people who want to watch this stuff, and it's crazy. I mean, it's great, but it's like, it's just do it because you love it, and do the setting that you love, do the system that you love, like even if a million other people are doing it, because your show's gonna be unique no matter what, because your home games are unique. Like what you play at home is unique. So no matter what you're doing, it's going to be yours, and you should be proud of it and happy and do it because you love it.
Absolutely. All right, with that benediction, let's do some questions. Anybody have any questions? I think we have our friend from PAX with the mic coming this way. And I don't know, do you want them to come to the center here or just raise hands? I think raising hands is the order of the day. Or we can have them line up.
This is working. Good.
Awesome. All right. Or let's go ahead and form a line right here in the front, so we just make sure that we answer people
by the
in the correct
projector.
order.
I'm just sitting here licking the fake dirt off my hands.
I'm brushing glitter out of my hair.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
You're
That's
such a gremlin, I love it.
It's dedication.
You'll always be trash mama to me.
I know.
All right,
I mean,
hi.
it's the same thing.
Yeah, right.
So tell us your name and ask your question.
Hi, I'm Atticus, and I have so many questions, but the one that I'm really interested in is, what are your guys' opinions on D&D live play, or RPGs live play, or like true play versus edited? And by edited, I don't mean like scripted, I mean like edited to be like a show. And then I'm like, what I'm 80% sure is a related note, D&D that's meant to be watched versus like podcasted or as an audio medium. What are your guys' opinions on these things?
Cool. So, what's the difference between playing it raw and live versus taking what you played and then editing it down into something more digestible?
I think, personally, obviously, because I'm the person speaking, I think editing, I wouldn't go down that route. I feel like it adds a lot of work that you could just be doing at the table as a GM. Because if you're thinking of your session as an episode, you're already framing the action in such a way as to make it feel like a show. I also think it seems like a step backward, but video shows should also keep in mind how to package themselves as podcasts later, because a lot of people, there's a lot of content out there, and it's very hard to sit down and watch all of it. But I listen to a lot of role-playing episodes on flights. A lot of people do it when they're commuting. So like when you're playing a game, you might have the most beautiful map that your live audience can see, but you still want to be describing things in a way so that people that are just listening can still engage.
Any agrees, disagrees from you guys?
If you'd asked me 3 years ago, I would have said that of course you would want to edit it down to like a digestible YouTube video, and I'm amazed at how my opinion has shifted 180 degrees over 3 years. Yeah, I definitely think there's a market for edited content in that sense, but it is so much work, and it seems like an awful lot of work for not a lot of payoff, in my opinion. And I don't necessarily think it improves anything.
I think that's key, is think about what audience you're trying to serve. You know, if you're trying to serve an audience that maybe doesn't already watch live stream tabletop games and maybe doesn't get it, maybe they need something a little more digestible to get into it. Maybe there's a bite size that then they could check out the full size later, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we package C Team up between YouTube, podcast form, and Twitch. And one thing that we had to be extremely careful about was how people talk over each other at the table, and that's so natural to do when you're at home and you're hanging out with your friends. You know, everyone's just kind of talking at once. But for podcasts, you have to have everyone kind of taking their turns and making sure that they're, you know, getting their idea out before someone else begins, because it gets very convoluted very quickly.
Thank you, good question. Appreciate it.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
I'm Resident Paul, Mass Squad extraordinaire.
Hello.
I just have a quick question on more of a design aspect when it comes to streaming games, and it's more of not a 6th edition D&D, but like, what does 7th edition D&D look like when when the design takes into account streaming the games as opposed to just playing them at home?
7th edition Dungeons & Dragons will come in pill form, and it'll be nanites you inhale, and then you'll transcend into the cyber void. No, I mean, this is a thing that I talk about a lot, because I think that when you play a role-playing game online with an audience, you invariably are changing that game. Like, live play is a hack of D&D, because D&D was not designed to be played the way or in the environment in which we are playing it. I think that future editions will certainly take that into account and change the rules or offer options for those things. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point we saw some kind of guest-authored Unearthed Arcana with advice or rules changes from people like myself or Matt Mercer that are like, here's how to make D&D more fun to watch. Because there's lots of stuff, if you play it as written, that is boring or really weird to have happen when you get invested in a character, and then it's like, cool, this is the big climactic bow. They died in the first round. So that was awkward. Good show, everybody. See you next week. So I think that there are narrative concerns that will get written into the game to make that easier to do, because I think that it behooves Wizards as a development company to make the game more fun to watch, because then the game seems more fun, and then people will buy it. So it's the whole cycle working for them.
I wouldn't be surprised to see some of those things that the DMs are naturally doing, like, tell me what that looks like, or, okay, you tried to roll a persuasion check, but now give me the speech that you would have given, because those are the things that make the stream fun, but they're not necessarily currently written into the rules of the game. So those might be the things we start to see if we do see future editions taking this into account. What do you guys think?
I think it's going to exist as sort of almost like a micro supplement. I think a lot of the future of at least Dungeons, I think it's going to be a core rule book, and then micro books for different forms of play. microbook for playing an evil campaign, a microbook for a live stream campaign, and I think there'll be a lot of tightening up things and rules for rewarding good role play.
I would be interested to see like some sort of tracking on how box text changes in adventures, because right now you don't want to read all of that on screen. And it's not to say it's poorly written. It's just the way it's laid out is not for somebody talking into a camera, and all of the other players are sitting there trying to like also look into their webcam, and like it's just a really weird dynamic for that much text. So I feel like that might even unconsciously start to morph as they get more used to live play.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good question.
Hi, twitch.tv/Elyssa. I have a question about green screen. What is the most interesting way that you've seen green screen used in a tabletop RPG?
Good question.
I really like how it takes the room that's behind you and makes it go away, and you can use it for something.
Besides the actual how green screen works.
I mean, it's pretty magical to begin with.
This is true.
Yeah, I don't know, like,
I've seen it used to put the players in a setting, like use the art of the setting that they're in. For example, if you have like 5 settings that they're moving between, just using that and then putting that behind the players. It's difficult though because a large portion of us are not playing in the same room, so then you're dealing with individual green screens. You can't put a setting behind the players in that sense. So I actually proselytize the idea that if you want it to feel real and raw and intimate, a lot of times just show what's behind you, invite people into your home, you know.
Go get some cheap dollar store decorations and put them up on your wall.
you know.
in Anna's case, that usually means Jeff
Yeah.
behind her.
My husband and all of our D&D art. Yeah.
And your crickets.
Yeah.
The snoring dog.
I'm a big fan of a fern. that you
Yeah.
can put
I
behind.
did have actually I did have the opportunity in the last session of the Tomb of Annihilation game that I'm running to one of my players, Distracted Elf. She's playing a kobold. And I just took her webcam and made it very small. So everyone else is normal size, and she's about this big.
That's awesome.
That's genius.
I thought it was really funny. She was not so pleased by it. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a good point. Like to your point, there's some neat tricks that you can do to help build that. I know some streamers have used voice changers. So if they're playing, like when we played our Star Wars game, we had a character who played a droid, and whenever he spoke, he turned on a little like roboticizer, like a bit crusher for his voice. And there are little like tricks that you can do that can help for the audience pull them into that world, for sure. And green screens and backgrounds are definitely one of them.
Totally.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, just don't get overwhelmed with that stuff. Like, you don't need it. Like, you know, like, it's all about the characters and stuff, because if you get too many toys going on, like, I would just be like, now I'm in Schultz, now I'm in space. Like,
And it's gonna break. It's
Yeah,
just gonna break.
it all
It's gonna
breaks,
break
yeah.
and not work, and that's okay.
so don't stress, is what I'm saying.
Hiya, I'm Judy, Jet Set. On my butt. Okay, I have a bunch of questions. I'm going to try and keep it quick. Firstly, for those of you in theater and those of you who aren't in theater, is there anything that you do to prepare for something, for performative role-playing? Like, do you have any warm-ups or anything to like kind of loosen you up and, you know, make the improv better?
That's a good question.
The beginning of the stream, there's like usually this bit of time where the cast just kind of catches up with each other and like jokes about, you know, current events, and that is warm up for a lot of people, and the audience may not have clued into the purpose of it, and maybe even the players don't know, but you just don't want to cold start your stream with, okay, you're in a dark, damp room, and everybody's like, I just sat down with my coffee, could you
Take it back.
chill just a bit? So that intro stream and like a lot of the setup time before the stream goes live, you're hanging out in whatever Skype, Zoom, whatever call thing you use, and you're just kind of like bouncing off of each other. Well, you're having a conversation like normal humans, but that helps you warm up to getting into character and having a conversation as not so normal humans.
Yeah, we do that on our show too. Like, for a while there, they were like, we're moving, and like we couldn't do our like warm up. I'm like, we need that.
Yeah.
Like, we need that because we need to chuckle until we go into our terrible times.
It was a weird conversation. It was a weird conversation to have because it took a changing of resources for them to give us back that 15 minutes. But we were like, hey, we need to just chit chat for 15 minutes. We really need that.
We really need that. We need
Yeah.
to just joke around, please.
No,
Yeah.
because you've got things you need to say to your other players, and if you're, like in a normal D&D game, you're just gonna say them mid-game, but like, you gotta get all of that normal human interaction out of your system.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a really good point, is streaming is so different from a normal game because we don't stop in the middle to be like, I have to go to the bathroom really quick, and then I'm gonna go and make myself a tortilla, quesadilla. Anyone else want that? Like, is anyone else hungry? Okay, we'll go get coffee. Like, yeah. Like you can't do that. Like, it's like, and I feel like that's such a different thing because like we have to be like, okay, we are ready to go for 2 hours or however long like we're doing it for. So.
Yeah, we kind of have a similar thing with C-Team where everyone kind of talks right before we start, and then we give them a minute, and right at the minute countdown, they all start singing the intro song together, but without hearing it. Yeah, it's amazing.
That's really cute.
For the live show, though, on stage, before we start, we always do a refresher game before we begin. So we take about 15 minutes and ask everyone, because a lot of those people haven't played together in 3 or 4 months.
Right.
They need to kind of get back into that mindset.
Oh, cool.
My preparation for a game usually involves drinking. I have a bottle of whiskey that
Relatable.
I have a playlist too. I have character playlists.
Yeah.
Just
Oh,
like
yeah,
sort of
we have
like
those too.
On the drive over, I just have a couple songs. I'm like, all right, that'll get me.
I love character playlists.
Oh God, they're so
They're
good.
so good.
They're so helpful.
They're so
Playlists.
good.
Yeah.
Playlists.
Playlists.
It's really helpful because I think the biggest challenge as like an improv actor, if you will, is getting in the mindset of I am a different person dealing with these complex emotions while I, the human, am also playing this game. And so I actually do a lot of writing between shows to just kind of be like, here's what my character is thinking about what happened last week, so that like then I'm prepared to be like, what does Evelyn or
I don't want to be in the mindset of a D&D character. Have you seen them? They are bad
Yeah.
people. Like, oh, what do you do to get ready? Well, I take an axe and I stalk around my neighborhood looking for small creatures to murder. I steal from my neighbors and
That's what
burn
makes
down
it
their
hard,
house.
yeah.
It's great. And then I'm ready. I'm ready for my game.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you. I just
Yeah,
had
thank you.
one other question. I'm really sorry. But for the GMs, I've already, I've been a part of office hours. I've seen Tristare's DM prep. I've seen, Matt's GM tips and stuff. My own frustrations with starting out as a DM for the first time led me to make a Discord channel where like a bunch of DMs just sit and talk about their frustrations. So what other resources do you think could be out there to encourage people to start DMing and GMing? Because people still think there are far too few of them.
Thank you.
There is an arcane circle of protection around the dungeon master's art that was erected in ancient times by the dark gods of D&D, because people like Gary Gygax wanted to feel special, and they wanted to sell the DM job as somehow being like magical and significant in some way. It's not. You're just playing the same game by slightly different rules. That demystifying it is the biggest thing that anyone can do, right? Showing their work, right? Like talking about prep, not buying into that like, I'm the GM, I'm so special, right? Like turning over some of that power and being like, let me show you, it's easy, and encouraging other GMs.
And all games are collaborative too. It's like the GM and all the characters and the GM should make the game technically together, even though they're leading you as a character, like you want to provide like cool surprises for them too. So it's like, it's a give and take. So it's definitely not as mystical as it is, but it's like it's amazing when you get that chemistry of the characters also wanting to almost take on the role to surprise the DM. So.
And I also think communicating with your players about it, and just being like, hey, I have never done this before, but we're all sitting here and we're just gonna do it. We're just gonna do it live, and hopefully it's fine. And just like being open about it and not being like, yes, I know exactly what I'm doing. I osmosed it from the ether in my youth, and I don't need to practice. This first time is gonna, like, you don't put that pressure on yourself.
Yeah, and to be completely honest, I'm really nervous because I want to DM a stream game at some point, but I count on my fingers, so.
Travis actually said, I forgot to subtract. I forgot, he was like, his first DMing, and he was like, I had to like Google how to subtract again, I'd forgot, like, I panicked so hard. He panicked so hard, he was like, I forgot how remainders and carrying things were, like, and It's stressful for your friends, and I will admit, there's a certain, I mean, you feel better after a few minutes, but it's fun, but it's definitely intense. It's flying a plane.
Thanks.
Flying a plane.
Except with a soft land, no matter what, it's got like bumper, except you're just always gonna land in like.
This metaphor is crashing and burning very badly.
Will you?
The metaphor is on fire. Bail out.
By my watch, we only have a few more minutes, so let's kind of lightning
Yeah.
round these next few questions.
Yeah, so I love how in a game I can use a voice or an accent to instantly like describe a character. You can avoid the description, you just use an old man voice, and they can see the frail old man. And as I've been preparing for Tomb of Annihilation, which takes place in D&D Africa, I've realized how a lot of accents can be problematic and stereotypical. And so my question is, how do you guys portray diverse characters without falling prey to caricatures and stereotypes and problematic
That's a great
versions of them?
question.
This guy.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's a good question. You have a good answer?
I think.
Damn.
I think the thing is the easy route is to just do the funny accent and haha, you're playing a character. But if you're playing in a situation where everyone in the situation is going to speak differently than your normal speaking voice, you can use your normal speaking voice and use inflection and tone and volume instead, right? Like, accents are a form of mimicry, and mimicry can be homage or it can be caricature, depending on how you do it. But I find it much more useful to affect a voice that is your own but changed. Like listen to any like properly recorded like audiobook, and it isn't going to be a series of funny accents. It's going to be the reader's voice inflected differently in a lot of subtle ways. And so just like practice, figure out the character. Their culture is a part of who they are, but it's not the only thing that your voice should reflect, especially if there's a bunch of people with a shared accent. It's just not worth
I'll
it.
also just quickly to add to this, because this is something we deal with on multiple levels. There are two different types of accents. There's interlanguage accents and external language accents. There's the accent of someone who doesn't speak a language, attempting to speak it, and then regional accents that develop from just the way the language slowly mutates over the world, and they're two very different things. You can get away, honestly, especially for external language accents, they tend to be very varied. They tend to go all over the place, and most people don't know how to do them other than to make them sound really silly, which is sort of a problem. I'd recommend always push more characters. Like, you would be amazed how often you think you're hearing an accent, and instead you're just hearing characterization, someone pushing something. There's no accent here. It's just putting your voice somewhere. I did a thing with Satine for her DM tips I would recommend. That's about developing good voice tools that had nothing to do with accent. So that's my little plug.
Great, thank you.
Hey, you guys, I'm Miles Duffield. I run twitch.tv/geeksforgood. We stream games for charity. And I'm a performer first. That's my background, right? So what I have been not struggling with, but like experimenting around is, where does the game end and the entertainment begin? Because as we discussed earlier, like playing games with your friends is not all that entertaining because we're always talking over each other. There's a lot of personal drama that happens, right? How do we separate and how do we use the rules to make good art?
Keep in mind that you are not playing for yourselves, you're playing for an external audience. Like, I would say it's all entertainment. And you have to be conscious of your audience and not, you can't forget about them and just start, talking over each other, or last week you said blah, blah, blah. Like, no, you're on stage. And just like performing in a play or improv or anything, don't forget you're on stage.
Yeah.
I just think about what goofs I can make.
Yeah.
I mean, same though, but that's what chat is for.
Yeah.
Yep. Hope that answered your question. Thank you. Let's try to get to a couple more until they cut us off. It's time to, this is the last one? Okay. Sorry, guys.
Sorry, everybody. Hi, I'm Eric, aka Eric Vulgaris on everything. So my question is for mostly everyone who does a lot of the production work and all that kinds of things. Everything from the social media to the actual production to hiring artists to the actual playing in front of people, then all this YouTube and everything like that. So what is everybody's like least favorite part of making this into a show?
Doing panels at conventions. Just kidding.
Basically everything you just listed. As you know, Eric does all that work for me. I don't do it because I hate it. But you knew that, so sorry. And thank you.
Social media management can be very intense and very stressful and very emotionally draining. It's draining when it's positive. It's even more draining when it's negative. And learning how to, it's like Tai Chi, figuring out how to like deal with all sorts of responses to what you're doing. It's very complicated, and you can very easily misstep. And once you misstep, it's very easy to turn to make things go very badly.
See, that's weird. He was like, that doesn't, like, social media doesn't stress me out. And I was like, I have pictures. But, like, I get way stressed out about my equipment. Because, like, every time I'm just like, I'm going to get a better mic. And they're like, your mic, I can't hear your mic. I'm like, why? Is it cursed? Why? like, I just, that's the stuff that stresses me out. Like, so Mr. Fancy over here. It's okay. I have my birds in the background of my room going beep, like. But it's just, that's what stresses me out. And you know what? But there are people for that, and you can ask them, and you can be a nice social person. But we talked about social anxiety, so you can just go around that and just keep messing up until you figure it out.
Find a musician friend to help you.
There you go. Yeah.
I've got a medal.
It's a good question because that can help someone who might want to get involved in a tabletop stream that maybe doesn't want to be on camera but wants to be involved. Some of these places are good places where you could offer to help and get involved, and that's been how a lot of us have kind of started doing this kind of stuff.
Find a friend who wants to be like a fledgling producer. Just be like, I want to produce your show, and then like they can start like doing that, and it'd be so awesome, and then they can become Elyssa.
Yeah, I think for me
Yeah,
the
your
hardest-
voice for me was actually spot on, completely spot on. I wake up every morning. I'm not a marketing person, and I hate marketing with a passion, and I have to work with that stuff, and it's awful. The rest of it, commissioning artists and getting all of the logistics in place, like that's fun. I have so many spreadsheets. I have spreadsheets for spreadsheets. I'm sure you can attest to that.
My spreadsheets have spaceships on them. They're cool spreadsheets.
I need that spreadsheet.
I'm gonna end on an uncharacteristically positive note. I love every goddamn thing about it. Like, there is no part of streaming as a job and doing this role-playing thing that I do not love to death. Like, even the tough stuff, it feels rewarding, so.
What a good note to end on. Thank you, Adam. Thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Eric.